how she survived with such a tissue damage. It's a cellular parasite.
Is that the source?
Yes. And this one looks like a highly virulent form of mold. Fungi and mold are the least studied forms of life. And this one is unknown to science. Olga?
We have a situation in the infirmary. Get over here.
Dysfunctional body temperature. Controlling the muscles.
Hey guys, what's happening? Nihat here with Film Comics Explained, and as requested, today we're going to be exploring the Super Deep. Based on the real-life Kola Super Deep borehole, a scientific drilling project of the Soviet Union to get as close as possible into the Earth's crust, the Super Deep is a 2020 Russian horror film directed by Arseny Sukhin. A research team is sent 40,000 feet below the Earth and discover a prehistoric foe that could annihilate humanity in the grossest way possible: involuntary assimilation. Set in 1984, we follow Anna Fedorova, an epidemiologist trying to resign from her post after the death of her colleague Dr. Zotov. Completely ignoring protocol, the doctor had stupidly volunteered to test a vaccine on his body without doing enough preliminary testing.
I should have run this test on myself.
If you quit, then Zotov died for nothing. I'm sure you can learn from your mistakes.
While eventually creating a successful vaccine, Anna feels horrible, wishing that she'd taken the botched sample instead of Zotov. Receiving a call from her superior during a New Year's Eve dinner, she's informed that there's a situation at the Kola borehole that requires her attention.
What kind of station is that?
Officially, the deepest borehole in the world. Unofficially, it's a secret research lab.
In true USSR fashion, the colonel gives her little information, but says that sounds of unknown origins were recorded deep below the surface before contact was lost with about 20 workers. Realizing it has something to do with an outbreak, she accepts and is immediately sent to the remote site. Along with the colonel, Anna and a squad led by Major Sergei are flown by helicopter to the frozen facility. Setting the stage for things to come, when they land, a man in a lab coat approaches them, armed with a hand grenade. Despite the soldiers around him at the base and those on the helicopter telling him to stand down, he defiantly walks towards the chopper. After getting shot multiple times, he drops the grenade, killing himself and injuring a few people. What they and Anna don't immediately realize is that he's immobilizing the chopper to prevent what he found from leaving. After taking samples from the man that attacked them, Anna orders they test everyone that had already been rescued.
When he got to the surface, he went out of control. He was so strong that the three of us couldn't hold him down.
Tensions are high among the survivors, who are clearly hiding something and just want to leave. A man named Zimin tells Anna that they're being lied to, and that everything is not as it seems. He explains it isn't a disease they're dealing with, but something worse, alluding to the lower levels of the facility being hell. What he says appears to be crazy at first, but as we progress deeper below, we'll come to realize that he wasn't that far from the truth. The squad are then met by Deputy Head of Research, Peter Kuznetsov, or as I like to call him, Budget Henry Cavill. Peter reported his superior, Dr. Grigoriev, for being shady after finding a disease that he refused to discuss. Grigoriev is willing to help, but demands a guarantee that the remaining workers in the lower levels of the facility be rescued. The doc is being mad sus.
In our profession, there is nothing worse than the betrayal of our principles.
Get to the point, Comrade Grigoriev.
I completely changed the elevator codes.
He tells them that he's the only one with the key and passcodes to the lift, and that 3 failed attempts would result in the failsafe sending them to their deaths. Bold design for a lift, but let's see if this pays off. He then proceeds to fail the first 2 tries before getting it right on the final attempt. While he wants them to help his workers stuck below, he clearly does not want to go back down. To everyone's horror, the brakes don't work during the descent. Grigoriev is then seen depressurizing the lift and putting on an oxygen mask before everybody else passes out. When they awake, they realize the doc has gone further into the facility with the key. They also find an engineer named Nikolai and a doctor named Kira, who were not happy about having been left behind in the initial evacuation. After confirming that they both had no signs of infection or disease, Anna is approached by Dr. Grigoriev, who begs her to convince the others to leave. Thinking he's lost his mind, Anna alerts the team, and the trigger-happy men open fire.
Save them while you still can. People should always be a priority.
With the wounded doctor fleeing and taking the key with him, they're forced to descend through the shaft with protective suits. As they prepare to move ahead, the door is opened from within by Olga, a lab assistant that somehow survived the extreme temperature without any gear.
She worked at Sahara Lab.
She walked all the way up from Sahara.
How did you get here without a hazmat suit? And what happened down there in the lab?
Taken to the med lab, Olga appears to have a fever, declaring that she was cold despite burning up. When they examine her back, they're shocked to find mold-like growths taking over. Taking a sample, they're able to determine it is a type of fungi similar to cordyceps.
So, what is your professional opinion?
It's a cellular parasite.
Is it the source?
Yes,
What does that mean for us?
fungi and mold are the least studied forms of life, and this one is unknown to science.
Much like the Ophiocordyceps unilaterus fungus, it has one goal: self-propagation and dispersal. The fungus typically found in tropical forests infects an ant through spores that attach and penetrate the exoskeleton and slowly take over its movement. It legit has the ability to take over the body of a host. As the infection advances, the host is compelled to leave the cold for a humid microclimate that's favorable to fungal growth. Ants are essentially compelled to find a high vantage point, sink their jaws into a leaf, and wait for death. Meanwhile, the fungus feeds on the host, prepping it for the final stage. Then the fungus sends a fruiting body out, turning the shriveled corpse into a launch pad from which it can jettison its spores and infect more life forms. The SP cordyceps is a much more aggressive form of this that can use any and all life forms for self-propagation and dispersal. In true horrific fashion, the host regains their mental faculties and is completely aware of their slow demise. Not only has it begun its hostile takeover by infecting and assimilating the rest of the workers that were trapped, but deep within its lair lies its main body, a sickly fungal growth of unfathomable size. While kept in check by a layer of permafrost, the Kohler borehole has given it a means of escaping its eternal prison, resembling the hell that Zimin described. This is why the doc announces that he had no choice but to seal them inside after they refused to evacuate.
I was hoping that you would walk us back through the shaft.
Oh, shit.
Again.
He's gonna blow up the whole shaft.
The resulting explosion damages the pressure pumps supporting the facility, meaning the entire thing will collapse in an hour. At the same time, Kira is attacked by Olga's possessed body. When Anna and Major return to the med lab, they find it covered with mold, along with Olga fused into the bioluminescent fungi around her. They quarantine the room and Colonel tells Anna to collect more samples. As she does so, a cloud of spores are released, infecting Major.
I'll help. Hold the vial.
Anna manages to get a mask on, but is then approached by a mutating Kira. She tells her that she's cold and losing control of her muscles that are essentially forcing her to move towards Anna.
Controlling my muscles. I'm so cold.
Anna manages to get away, but suffers more hallucinations of her former colleague, no doubt her guilt resurfacing. Waking up to the fire extinguisher systems going off, she decontaminates and exits to find Nikolai. Unfortunately, Major is very much infected. Knowing that he has the potential to spread it, he tells Anna to ensure his body doesn't leave the facility. But the Colonel has other plans. Seeing the infection as a weapon that could strengthen the USSR, he forces her to bring Major along with them.
Our country is falling apart as we speak. We need a weapon that will make our military dominance indisputable.
They make significant strides in their analysis of how the SP cordyceps variant works. The mold can't survive in the cold, which is why the infected bodies keep saying they were cold, and the permafrost surrounding the facility is the only thing keeping it from spreading. They also note that in this cold, the only way the mold can live is within a warm-bodied host. So if a host dies, the mold dies as well.
Inside of a warm-blooded carrier, it can survive everything. But if a carrier dies in a cold environment, the parasite dies too.
Of course, if it were to make it to the surface and find warm weather, then it's all over. As the group prepare to move through the shaft, they receive a message from the other half of the team saying they're under attack. The men also warn them not to open the door to the lower level shaft, even if it's them that's asking, indicating that some of them were infected. After the sound of gunfire in the distance, 2 men return, claiming they ran into something so big that their weapons had no effect, and now it knows exactly where they are. Shit then hits the fan when a 3rd soldier arrives missing an arm. Instead of joining them, horrified by what he experienced and likely also infected, he takes his life as a door closes.
You shouldn't have opened the door. Now it knows.
Going out like heroes, the soldiers stay behind to confront the creature chasing them, while Anna, Nikolai, Peter, and the Colonel make it to the lower level. There they find a wall of infected workers fused together by the fungi that were killed by the cold, alluding to the type of horror claiming the soldiers above.
But it's learned to melt bodies together for warmth.
They also hear an ominous message from the doc, who claimed he was so enraptured by the true form of the infection that he had to see it again. Finally coming to his senses, the Colonel agrees with Anna that he should not be allowed to reach the surface. He then volunteers to brave the immense heat outside to retrieve the elevator key from the dock. As they wait, Anna tells Peter and Nikolai to keep what they saw a secret if they manage to make it out alive. The reason for this was simple. Like the Colonel before his change of heart, his replacement would also foolishly want to turn the infection into a weapon that could transform all life on the planet.
If we get out of here, nobody mustn't tell anything about what happened down here.
When the Colonel doesn't return, Anna goes out into the heat unprotected and finds the key on his dead body, along with the Lovecraftian fungal behemoth around them. Despite everything they went through, when she returns, Peter holds them at gunpoint and raves about how famous he'll become for discovering the mold. He shoots Nikolai before being attacked by a creature made of screaming infected hosts that are fused into one body. Hiding in the freezer and using freezing water as a fungal repellent, Anna gets closer to the creature and removes the key from the absorbed body of Peter, who played himself. She finds Nikolai and they manage to make it to the lift in time. However, as they begin their ascent, they find the infected body of Major fused to the floor, waiting to spread its spore. Once again, he begs that he not be allowed to make it to the surface, but at his breaking point, Nikolai fights Anna and demands they continue their escape. Regaining control over his arm, the Major saves her by killing Nikolai. Finally giving him that kiss he'd been after, Anna tries to initiate 3 failed passcode attempts, but is slowly being overwhelmed by the fungi's control over her body. When they reach the surface, she finally sets it off, sending the lift plummeting over 40,000 feet, but not before being dragged away by a hazmat team. In a repeat of the events we saw at the start, Anna takes a grenade and pulls the pin, killing the mold and taking the secret to the grave with her.
Get the chopper ready. We have a survivor.
Don't move!
Well, that's all for today, folks. A huge thanks to everyone who requested we explore Super Deep. If there's anything else you'd like me to explore, please don't hesitate to ask. As always, it's been a pleasure. Nihat here with Film Comics Explained. Thanks for stopping by.
I've opened the door.
Will the doors hold?
I wish I knew.